Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold. This is our post-match show of Fulham's 2-0 victory against Tottenham Hotspur at Craven Cottage on Sunday. Tony was there, so we're going to have a good time talking about this match. I look forward to it, and we'll be going for probably about an hour. This should be a lot of fun because there's a lot to talk about in regards to this match. I also want to mention, and I appreciate people that have been doing this, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and obviously more than that, but would love everyone possible. If you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube channel, please do. And then also please give this episode a like. All right, my friend, let's get to it. You and I talked after the match. Let's start here. Give me your opening thoughts. It's a day later. How are you feeling?
He's one of our own. He's one of our own. Ryan Sessegnon. He's one of our own. Sorry, I had to do that, Russ.
That's fine.
No, listen, you know what? Yesterday, for a whole host of reasons. Number one, we beat Tottenham. Number two, we kept a clean sheet. And number three, Ryan Sessegnon scored an absolute worldie. And you know what? You couldn't have written it. You couldn't have written it any better. Coming off cloud nine now, obviously, great result. Not a particularly great performance. Certainly not first half anyway. But, Fulham found a way. They stuck in the game and got the job done. I think Silva, obviously, his substitutions completely changed the game, which was obviously beneficial for us. But all that said, Tottenham were absolutely woeful, Russ. And I mean woeful. They are absolutely in complete and utter disarray. Ange's team selection made absolutely no sense to me. And actually played into Fulham's hands and did them a favour.
Absolutely.
So you know what? They deserved everything they got yesterday, is the honest truth. And I'm just so delighted that the game finished the way it did and Sessegnon had his moment, because everything that he went through in his, 5 years at Tottenham, he deserved that moment yesterday. He really did.
He absolutely did. And anyone that has seen it, if you have not seen it, go to the X page of Fulham Football Club, because they actually have moments in the dressing room, Tony. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant.
Amazing stuff. So I would highly recommend everyone watching that, because for me, if that doesn't give you chills, it gave me chills watching that. The whole situation, we're going to talk a lot about Sessegnon, because it's well deserved that we focus a decent amount on that, even though he's in the match for only a short period of time. The impact and what it meant, not just for him, but for Fulham Football Club, is immense, Tony. So that's going to be part of the focus of talking into this match, especially when we talk about, when we get there, talk about that. But for me, this is what makes it different, Tony. And I've said this to you. You and I keep talking about the roller coaster ride, which has been Fulham this season. And it is just full of inconsistencies. And the performances at times aren't the greatest. But here's what is encouraging to me. When you're not playing your best, when the performance isn't at its best, finding a way to win. Finding a way to win. And I want to ask the Fulham supporters, anyone that's watching, think about all the signature victories we've had. The ones that stand out. We're talking Brentford. We're talking Chelsea. Manchester United. Now we have this. This is still just a signature victory for Fulham Football Club. There are so many of these. Beating Nottingham Forest twice. How about beating Newcastle United, who won the Carabao Cup twice? Think about that. Think about everything Fulham have done, Tony. But then we have the other side. That's the inconsistency. But that, to me, is what goes along with the story of the season, which makes it different, because I've seen a lot of talk, and we can talk about this. Europe, it's just a pipe dream. I don't think it's a pipe dream, my friend. They sit 8th. The table doesn't lie. It's still difficult, but there are matches coming up against the teams around them which will decide if they get into Europe. It's in their hands. That, to me, is what makes it exciting. Europe is not out of the question. It's up to Fulham to get it done, Tony. And this is a major step in that direction. Every time I think that they're out, it's almost like Godfather 3. They pull me back in. And they did it again, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is Fulham this season, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's you said you don't know what you're going to get.
No.
From my perspective, ideally, I'd like to see us playing, looking after the ball a little bit better at times. I thought yesterday, certainly first half, we were very cheap in turning over play and giving it back to Tottenham. Thankfully, they were just as bad, in fact, probably worse than us in that regard. But look, at some point, Fulham will put in a good performance. They may not necessarily get the result because obviously they've got some big games coming up now, really big games. And I think actually that works in our favour because that will bring out, I believe, the best in us. We seem to play and raise our game to another level against the better sides, and we're playing all of them, So I think that's a good thing. I just hope that we don't get burnt out before we get to that stage where those last sort of 3 games are going to be critical.
And you make the point that I've been making, Tony. Fulham raised their games against the sides that they're going to be facing coming up. And that's what excites me because I can see them getting a good amount of points that maybe others don't see because I've seen it throughout the season. It's the teams below them that they really struggle against. And that to me is not going to be the story of what's coming up for them, except for a couple of matches. Everton, who actually has raised their game, so I don't see it that way. Southampton is the one, right? But beyond that, they're going against teams that are going to be either ahead of them or close to them. And I think that plays into their favor. That's what excites me about this. I do have to share some comments because we got some good ones. This is from Carol Tanner. You're going to love this one. Sorry to live in the past, but we'd be fourth if not for 3 stupid goals given up in the last minute of stoppage time this season. Tony, he has a point.
Yeah, we could look back over a number of games that Fulham could have, should have, would have, right?
I know.
And yeah, it's frustrating, and it's one of those where we should be where Nottingham Forest are. We should be, but we're not. And ultimately, it's that carrot, isn't it? It's dangling. And look, the great news is that we're still in it, and we've still got a great opportunity. And the thing is, it's still in Fulham's hands, Russ. It's still in our hands.
That's my point.
That's ultimately it.
That's where I want to go on this because I see this all over social media that it is something. Let's put it aside. It's unlikely. And I'm thinking, why is it unlikely if the matches are really in their hands? It's in their hands. And it's up to them to get it done. If they don't get it done, then it's on them, Tony. And that's fine with me. But it's definitely within their hands. It's not out of the realm to get to Europe at this point. They're 8th. They're there for a reason. They're absolutely there for a reason. I want to share this from Chris because he brings up a good point. As a Liverpool fan, I know all about finding a way to win when not playing well. And actually, that's...
Yeah, I think we need to say to Chris, condolences, Russ.
Yes, Chris. Sorry about your result. That was not good, Chris. We again, I'm no fan of Newcastle United. Congratulations to them, but I'm sorry to hear about, or I didn't even see the match, Chris. Sorry about that. And then of course Gary Cooper follows that up by talking about shout out to Dan Byrne. Delighted for him. I am delighted for
what a week he's had. What a week,
Lord, he's had a crazy week. I do have to share this from Kamal, who you met yesterday, right? You're gonna love this. Hey Russ, hey Tony, The Godfather 3. You pull me back in. Yes, Fulham have pulled us back in. I love it. I just mentioned that. Listen, I love movie references, so I have to mention that. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see. This is from Gary Cooper. We're going to talk about this during the show. Muniz changed the game. Boston. I totally agree with that. And this is from our friend Steve Reynolds. Keep the comments coming. We have to get results when not expected and rely on games going in our favor. Done 55K so far this season. Don't need Europe. So don't need you. Okay, well, listen, if you don't need Europe, Steve, that's fine. I want Europe. I get it. No, he's just kidding around. But he has traveled a lot. So good point by you, Steve. You've been everywhere with this team. All right, Tony, let's get to it. Let's dive into it. I'm excited to talk to you about this. And I think a good place to start is the good, the bad, and who won the coaching battle. So let's get started with the good. Who do you want to put in the good category to get us going?
There's so much to, I mean, look, let's be honest, right? First half, there's not much to talk about if we're being brutally honest, right? It was a pretty dour, anyone would think it was a pre-season friendly, the way that it was going. There was hardly any intent. Most of it was coming from Fulham, but both teams were, as I said, they weren't particularly great in terms of their passing, playing in the final third, giving the ball away. It wasn't great. However, if we look at the second half, one of the players that has to go in the good category, simply because of the impact he made when he came off the bench, Russ, was Rodrigo Muniz.
Absolutely.
For me, he completely changed, the game.
Won every header, Tony.
From an offensive point of view for us. This minute he went up there, he was physical. Like you said, he won every single. I don't think he lost a header yesterday, actually, that he challenged for. And his aggression and his movement actually turned the game for us. It really did. Because suddenly we had and this is I thought Raul did okay. Don't get me wrong. I thought he did all right. But he changed the gear. He changed the gear for us. And, he took his goal. His goal was actually, excellent. People haven't talked about that enough because of Ryan's goal. But actually, the way he placed it and finished it, because he could have snatched at that could have gone horribly wrong. Yep. But he's placed it really well. And that's obviously put us on the front foot to go and win the game. So he's definitely in the good category for me.
Okay. And I would agree with that. I'm going to add, and I said this to you after the match, I have Willian as my man of the match, because I think that what he offers is something maybe Fulham have been missing, Tony. Leadership, a calmness, and basically just a pure professional on the pitch. I think they're needing that at this moment. So I'm going to put Willian in there.
Yeah. The thing with Willian is he's got that experience, Russ. Right. He knows when to run with the ball. He knows when to stand still with it. He knows when to move it, pass it. He was always active in the game, always wanting the ball, getting into areas. Look, we know he's not going to beat 3 or 4 men now. He just doesn't have the legs to do that. But because of the quality that he's got on the ball, and we had some really good creative flair players on the pitch yesterday, and Tottenham didn't. And I think it really showed at times. So I think Gary Cooper's got an absolute spot on point there. He's maturing and growing, and we haven't seen anywhere near the best levels of him yet. Let me tell you, I think he could be exceptional next season. So that's a good point. But yeah, Willian, again, I know he was a lot of people's man of the match, and rightly so. I thought his contribution yesterday was spot on.
Okay, so let's go here and comment on this, because I think we should put Pereira in the good category. Steve Reynolds chimes in, would have gone with William, but on reflection, AP ran the show. What are your thoughts about Pereira?
One of his better games for us, absolutely 100%. If Silva takes him off corners and set pieces, he actually probably would be even better, to be honest, because his delivery is just awful. It's just so bad, and it winds me up. It just winds me up. William can take a corner. There's millions of people that can just get him off them. He doesn't do anything with those deliveries. It winds me up. But anyway, other than that, I thought he was, him, Smith Rowe, and William, as I said, I thought were really good yesterday. Really good.
I'm glad that you brought up Smith Rowe, because I thought he was very good in what he offered. Now, I thought his work rate was very good, Tony. You got to see it in front of you. I got to watch it on television, but I think it probably translates better at Craven Cuz. So I'm glad that you mentioned him. I'm going to add someone else to the good category, but really a moment. But overall, his play was very good. I have to mention Calvin Bassey just ragdolling a Tottenham player that, again, was just phenomenal. Did you get a chance to watch that?
Yeah, Romero, he absolutely sent him for one. It was lovely, especially for him as well, because he's such a miserable git. And yeah, I mean, you don't want to mess with Calvin Bassey, let me tell you.
That was great. Okay, so we've shared a lot of good. Anything else you want to add in the good category? Moments or anything? We'll talk about Sessegnon.
Let's talk about Sessegnon's goal. Okay. I mean, that's not only a good moment, that's a brilliant moment. He's going to remember that for the rest of his life. And that's a moment in Fulham history where, Fulham fans will always look back on that moment. And
Where
as I
was
said,
I, right? Where was
exactly,
I?
where was I? But also just because of what comes with that, Russ, because of, as I said, he had 5 really disappointing years at Tottenham. They didn't look after him particularly well. I don't think the fans were particularly, good with him. He got a lot of criticism, took a lot of rate. But you got to remember, he was 19 years old when he left us. 19. He was still a young player. And he was neglected at Tottenham. I know he had the injuries,
Yep.
and he went through, but the managers that he played under there neglected him. And now look at him. He's been back with us a season. Touch wood, hope he stays healthy. No injury problems. He's getting through games. And not only that, he's having an impact. He's having an impact. And yesterday, my word, I was so happy for him, Russ. Honestly, so happy.
You and I have talked about this, and I've really been championing him playing more, to the point where I said maybe you should consider starting him. But I'm glad that
he's making a point, isn't he? He's making a point now. And you're looking at him thinking, if he's coming on and having impact like that, maybe you've got to give him an opportunity.
I'm starting to think that maybe you should, but honestly, after watching Williams' performance, I think it's going to be hard. But honestly, what is going on with Sessegnon? We talk about it all the time. What a difference a great manager makes on a player, getting the most out of a player. We have to talk about Silva and his coaching staff. You just brought up what happened at Tottenham Hotspur. I've heard from Spurs supporters that told me that it really, hurt him when Pochettino left. Well, sorry that Pochettino left, but you know what? When he gets proper coaching, good coaching, and gets a coach that cares and is trying to make him a better player, get him back to where he was, that's why I think he still has just a high ceiling, Tony. Again, we're seeing the flashes. I don't think we have seen what he could ultimately become now. That's what's exciting about Sessegnon. I think Sessegnon should be with Fulham for a long period of time. Grass isn't greener. I think he's learned that now. And I just hope we get to see him in his prime, Tony.
Well, he's 24, or 25.
24 years old. We can get his prime.
He's got another 6-7 years in him easily. And I can understand Silva being patient and careful with him because he has had some, terrible hamstring injuries and had major surgery and stuff like that. So maybe he's just not at that level yet where he can get through, a full game and needs a proper good warm up before he gets on. So look, at the moment, it's great that it's working. He's coming on. He's having an impact, and that's tremendous. And it's great to see him. He's clearly happy to be back. He's feeling the love. He felt it yesterday when that goal went in, and that's all that matters at the moment. And the other thing we need to put in the good category, Russ, before I forget, is the substitutions that Marco Silva made yesterday.
Were fantastic.
That won us the game.
Absolutely. Let's talk about them. We'll talk about them when we get to breaking down the match. But you're talking about the substitutions. They all worked, Tony. They absolutely all worked. You've got the substitutions bringing on Traore and then obviously Muniz. And then shortly after that, I think it was actually a very good move for bringing on Tom Kearney. And then later on, you have Sessegnon. But that changed the match. It's funny because we're going to talk about a player that went off for Tottenham, which probably benefited Fulham with Christian Romero. That probably helped Fulham somewhat. But the substitutions with Fulham were a difference maker too, Tony.
Absolutely. And we'll cover it, obviously, as we get to the second half. But it made, massive difference. And that's Silva, obviously, looking at the game and using his tactical genius to see that, obviously, Tottenham are now going to be slightly weaker in an area, which, again, didn't make any sense. But at the end of the day, whatever. And we took advantage of it.
Okay. I'm glad that we talked about that as being the good. By the way, while we're doing the show live, I am watching a replay of the match. So I'm literally right now watching Muniz's goal, which is awesome. So we're doing the show, and I'm also making myself happy by watching back the match and watching the Tottenham goalkeeper swearing while giving up the goal, which is nice. Nice stuff. It's like I could do the show and actually watch back a great Fulham victory. Like I said, maybe not the greatest performance, but it's a great Fulham victory because they're going to be moments that we're going to remember for years to come. The Sessegnon moments, but beyond that, I think it's going to be something that we're always going to remember. That's what's great about this. All right, Tony, let's go to the flip side. The bad, I think you've already talked about it. Let's talk about the first half, because I just want to say that it was really, there's not a lot to talk about when we break down the match. I thought Fulham were better than Tottenham in the first half, but it reminded me a little bit of those Manchester United matches, which isn't good. Is it fair to put the first half in general in the bad category?
Yeah, I think so. But, you've got to start a game on the front foot and be positive. I think Fulham were trying to do that, Russ. It just, for whatever reason, and maybe it's the opposition had something to do with it.
I think they did. I think they did.
We just couldn't find a rhythm. We just couldn't get into a rhythm of flow. And nothing really much, materialized from it. I thought, as I say, our possession at times, our distribution, playing out from the back, we're putting ourselves under pressure, giving the ball away in midfield. It was very lackluster, but it was almost like we carried on from where we were at Brighton, last week, and Man U the week before. And it's a difficult one to sort of understand. But as I say, it's a good sign when you're not playing well and you're winning football matches. That's a good sign. That's a really good sign.
It's a great sign, honestly. So I'm glad we started there. I think it's fair to say we have to put Tottenham Hotspur in general in the bad category, Tony.
I
want to get your thoughts on this team, because it's funny. I said this to you before. Who's worse, Manchester United or Tottenham Hotspur? I think Tottenham Hotspur are in a bigger mess than Manchester United.
At the moment, Tottenham are in dire straits, absolute dire straits. I mean, over the years, one thing that Tottenham have always been is organised and played with intent and had a good work ethic. I did not see that in that team yesterday. Disjointed. Yep. I mean, look, obviously Ange has got his mindset on Europe now. That is absolutely critical for that football club. They have to win that Europa League now. They have to win it. Right. There's no ifs, buts, or maybe. So I think his focus now is entirely on that. But when I saw their lineup, Russ, I was like, wow, this is, where's Tottenham's creativity coming from? They've stuck an 18-year-old in the middle with Basuma and Bentancur. And you're looking at, they've got Bergvall, Maddison, Son, all on the bench, players that can really affect the game. I'm like, if Fulham don't get a result here today, they're never going to get a result. Do you know what I mean? And then you look at their defence, and as soon as I saw Ben Davies in there, I thought, there's no way we're not winning this game. There's no way.
I felt the same way, Tony. I was messaging with you, and when I saw their lineup, I'm thinking, what are they doing? But I think it just proves what you just mentioned. They were really focused more, I'm talking about Postecoglou, on the Europa League. And I guess I understand that, but it's almost like they said, you know what? We have to manage our players because of the Europa League, which you can do, but that team is, you said the word that I think best describes them, disjointed. And I've seen teams like this. I saw a Manchester United team, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, that reminded me that I had all these talented players, but were completely disjointed. This team's the exact same way. And it's almost like a rudderless ship. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to play this quote unquote Ange ball. But as I'm listening to all these podcasts about Tottenham, they're not really playing Ange ball now. I don't know what that means, but it's a mess. And he's under a lot of pressure. And if they don't win the Europa League, he's probably gone. He might be gone even if they do win the Europa League. But that team's a mess. I'm just glad that that's who they are and who Fulham are, because the two teams are headed in opposite directions. Fulham are heading forward. This team's heading, I think, backwards. And it's really bad.
What I always say to you, Russ, good teams don't let good players go, right?
Yeah.
They brought in Matthias Tell from Bayern Munich. Now,
that's right.
I can see why Bayern Munich have let him go out on loan. I can see. And you know what? I hope Tottenham keep Ange on another 6-year contract. I hope they give him a 6-year contract and keep him there. Honestly, I really do, because they are going nowhere under that manager. Absolutely nowhere. The guy is clueless. Absolutely clueless. And you know what? I understand it as well. he has to win that Europa League.
He
He has to keep his players fit. And trust me, Eintracht Frankfurt won't be easy for them over 2 games. That will not be easy. And the way they're playing at the moment, I don't see how they win that. I don't see how they win that. So, look, he's got a lot of pressure. But as I say, I don't care. At the end of the day, all I care about is Fulham, and we put one on them yesterday and they deserved it.
They absolutely did, Tony. So let's now go to who won the coaching battle. This one's interesting because for all my criticism of Ange Postecoglou, and I think it's well-deserved putting out that starting 11, he did make a significant change at halftime. So I'm going to give him that, bringing on Bergville and then, of course, Son. But the question is, why didn't you start them? But again, we can go on and on. That did change it for about 15 to 20 minutes, making that change. It totally changed that. But then he takes off Romero, which I think changed it back. Then you have Silva. Now, we're always on this show, we're talking about he makes the substitutions late. I don't think he did so this time. I might have done it a little bit sooner, but the substitutions worked. And honestly, I think he wins this coaching battle. Tony, how about you? What do you think?
Silva won it hands down, Russ. He won it hands down. At the end of the day, at 0-0, with what was it, 12 minutes of the game remaining, he's taken a gamble, Silva. He brought on Muniz, Traore, and Kearney. All right, The other two came on a little bit earlier than Kearney did, but on 63 minutes, he's made a brave move. All right, Raul, we know that's the change that he always makes. Raul's run himself into the ground for 62 minutes. Let's get Muniz in. He gives you something slightly different. But, we spoke about Traore on the other night and how much of an impact he makes. We know that he's that impact player. And boy, when he came on, he terrified them. He absolutely terrified. I thought his energy, his running, his physicality, again, it played a massive part in us going on and actually getting that first goal. Tom Kearney then replaces Smith Rowe, like for like, if you like, a little, because technically Kearney is superb. He holds the ball well, knows when to calm things down, knows where to play and that sort of thing. And he was brave, Silva. And ultimately, it was almost like Ange made the changes, but the horse had already bolted. It was too little, too late.
Yeah.
And those players that he brings on, Maddison, Son, Bergville, Odegaard, they should have all started. And it might well have been a different game for them. But you know what? So at the end of the day, Silva wins the coaching battle, hands down.
Totally agree. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the starting 11. We messaged back and forth. I actually liked the starting 11. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about it. We kind of had a feeling that he'd revert back to the 4. It kind of made sense. And there was no surprise. I mean, obviously, I wasn't expecting Willian to start. Let's be honest. I think that was a bit of a surprise. But I mean, there's an argument to say that Cesc could have started out there on the left to give a bit of balance.
Right.
But look, he went with what he went with. I think the only area that we seem to be struggling a little bit, and this is maybe something we could have spoken about in the bad category. I thought Castagna really struggled yesterday, Russ.
Yeah.
He
did.
I thought he was the weak link for us yesterday, and they were getting a lot of joy down that side.
That's a good point.
And it's I think against bigger sides and better sides, that could become a problem area for us.
What's interesting is you and I were talking about it, that it looks like Tete might be available in a few weeks. So if that's the case, I think, again, things are heading in our direction. And you and I are big fans coming into the season of Castagna, but I think it's obvious why Tete won the battle this summer, because he's playing at a much higher level. Nothing against Castagna. It's just that we do actually miss Kenny Tete. So when he comes back, I think things are going to settle down over there. That doesn't mean that Castagna is a bad player. He's just not the same as Kenny Tete. But I'm glad
he just looks like he's lost half a yard. That's what it looks like to me. Yeah. And the thing is obviously they got to manage Tete back in. They're not going to throw him straight back in after being out for so long. But look, I think that he's still a good defender, and ultimately yesterday he's still part of a back four that kept a clean sheet. Amen. Because I'm all about clean sheets. You know how important they are.
I know.
But I just think that, the one area where we seem to be vulnerable was down his side yesterday.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Coming up next, Tony and I are going to break down the match, and we'll end with man of the match. If you're watching live, please feel free to share who was your man of the match when we get there. Okay, Tony. I don't think we need to spend too much time talking about the first half, but let's get going on here because there weren't that many moments from either side. And it's funny because, like I said, I've listened to a ton of talk from the perspective of Tottenham, and they talked about their central midfield, that they knew that they were not going to have much joy going forward because of the midfield three they had. So that I was hearing a lot of talk. I think it kind of played that up. Maybe that's why we saw the first half that we talked about. It was basically two teams really not offering a hell of a lot in the final third, really attacking that much. You have the opportunity from Castagna, which was actually decent, Tony, but it was just not with any kind of authority, the shot. So when we're talking about that as being the only opportunity in the first half, I think that really speaks volumes to what we watched. But it's almost like both teams neutralize each other. Is that fair to say? But I think Fulham had a lot more of the possession, controlled the play, but it was almost like it didn't matter because they weren't getting any good opportunities.
I think the best way to sum it up, Russ, is that we actually, and this is going to be, some people think I'm mad saying this, we dropped to their level a little bit.
Yeah,
I think that was the issue. We lowered our standards to, where Tottenham are, and it's in football, you can't turn it on and turn it off. You have to.
Do you think we gave them too much respect? Do you think?
No, I don't even think it was that. I just think that we were happy to play at the level that Tottenham were at. And that's mad saying that because obviously, over the years, Tottenham have been, slightly higher in terms of levels and players. But actually, I just felt that we played at their level. We found it difficult to rise above it. And it's very difficult to, once you set your stall out, if you don't start right, it's very difficult to inject that extra tempo and pace and quality that you need. We found it in the second half, but we found it in the second half because Silva made the changes, not because the players on the pitch managed to change it. Silva changed it from the sideline.
Yep.
And obviously from Tottenham's perspective, Ange had to change it half time because they were so poor.
They were bad.
Johnson and Basuma came up. They were almost anonymous in that first half.
Where was Brennan Johnson in this match?
Anonymous. I didn't even know he was on the pitch.
I didn't know. Honestly, it's funny because I did not notice him at all. And I think that made sense. And I know Basuma's in the same exact category because they're killing him. The Tottenham supporters are killing him.
He was abysmal as well yesterday. So, ultimately, I think you've got to give Fulham credit for stifling Tottenham a little bit. Yeah. But the problem is at times we ended up
to their level,
dropping to their level.
Yeah.
And we were also very careless in possession at times, very careless with our final ball. And I was sitting there thinking, you know what? They're going to nick this. They're going to nick it. Because, it was in my mind, at the back of the mind, they're going to get one chance and they're going to score.
Just like Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly. But thankfully that didn't materialize.
It didn't, Tony. So let's transition to the second half. I think a good place to start is to talk about Ange making his substitutions. We already talked a little bit about it because it definitely affected the match, I want to say, for at least 15 to 20 minutes. Bringing on Son and bringing on Bergville, I think, were positive energy for that team. And you could see right off the bat, from the minute the second half began, that's when I started getting concerned. They were on it from the beginning that second half began. So I was just waiting. When is Marco going to make his move? Because it's a chess match almost. When is he going to make his move? So we kind of saw this out a little bit because they had some decent opportunities to score. You had that opportunity from Solanke. You had a few good opportunities. And it looked like at this point, they were the most likely ones to score until substitutions changed the match. We have Fulham substitutions of Traore and Muniz. That definitely changed it. But I think this goes hand in hand. I think it's fair to talk about it. You brought it up to me. And I think that we have to talk about Romero going off for them because that changed their defense big time. Now you have Archie Gray with Ben Davis back there. Nothing against Archie Gray, but he can do the job. Everyone that I've been reading says he's a great player. He can play multiple positions. But you're taking off a world-class player. And that's what they did. And that's when it seemed Fulham started to get their momentum, Tony. So let's talk about that whole scenario before we talk about Fulham's goals, the changes that both teams made.
I tell you what, if I was Marco Silva and Fulham, I'd be all over Bergville in the summer. I'll tell you, I would love
player.
To.
He's a good player.
He's going to be a fantastic player. Let me tell you, he oozes class, he's quality, and he's only going to get better. But anyway, that aside, look, I think Tottenham, they had to make those changes because they were that bad, and I could completely understand why Ange would not have been happy with that first half performance. So he's brought on Son and Bergville to, number one, get a bit of creativity, and number two, get a bit of pace in forward areas, which they were seriously lacking. I mean, Tell, had a few moments of down Castagna's side, to be honest, in the first half, but there's no quality. There was no end product, and that's a big problem for them. And then as far as Fulham's perspective is concerned, Muniz and Traore changed the tempo of the game from a Fulham perspective. They injected that little bit more energy, that little bit more quality, that little bit more work ethic. And you know what? If Tottenham was stupid enough to go Gray and Ben Davis and then, basically Muniz, he pulled them apart, Russ. They couldn't deal with him. They could not deal with him. He was physically stronger. He bullied them and he rattled them. And actually, that ultimately, gave us the impetus and created the first opportunity that we had, and which he took brilliantly.
Okay, very good. I also want to mention Kearney comes on for Emile Smith-Rowe. So now everything is complete at this point until you bring on Sessegnon late. But the three of them really put Fulham in motion to going forward. And let's now go and talk about the goal from Rodrigo Muniz. I'm calling this a team goal, Tony, because this was a determined goal. In fact, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's Jedi that gets the ball off of, I can't remember the player, but it gets the ball off of him, and then that starts the whole transition forward.
I think it was Odebert, Russ.
Odebert,
he nicks it off him, and they were lazy getting back, right? They literally just give it up, which is shocking from their perspective. But great ball. We win it back, plays it around William, ball into Pereira. And, Pereira's quality in terms of his technical football brain, plays a lovely little pass. And then the side foot from Muniz is a great finish. It's a great finish because he's only got that gap to play that ball into. There's nowhere else he's going. And it's a great finish.
Okay, very good. Okay, so now Fulham are up 1-0. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, and I'm glad that Steve Reynolds reminded me to talk about the Raul situation in the first half. We're going to talk about that to go along with the situation with Spurs, because I want to talk about them together. I know one's in the first half, the other is in the second half, okay? So the broadcast I watched, Tony, and I know you're on the other side, so you probably didn't get the greatest view of this, but Bergville goes down in the box. And to be honest with you, I think he went down 2 times before that, and they were complete dives. This one's a little bit different, but I still feel that this is not a penalty. I've seen arguments from refs saying it's a penalty, but the thing that's bothered me about this is that I knew this would become the story coming from the Spurs perspective and a lot in the media. Well, they could have had a penalty and then they could have won the match. I call complete BS on all of that. But let's just talk about, should they have been awarded a penalty? You've had a chance now to look at it. And then we'll talk about the Raul situation, because I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, sure. No, look, I've watched it back. I've seen it now. Obviously, during the game, it's hard to see, but having watched it, look, I've seen them given, Russ, is the truth. I have seen those given. But you know what? We've had some dodgy decisions given us against us this year with penalties. And you know what? I always say, over the course of the season, all these decisions even themselves out eventually. You know what? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Tottenham didn't get it. So we move on. There's nothing to talk about. Ultimately, Do I think it was a penalty? I think it would have been incredibly soft and really harsh had he given it. But I have seen them given, and I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd given it. So,
okay,
it's one of those.
All right, so now let's go back. I forgot to mention that when we talked about the first half. By the way, I have not really talked about this, but the ref was horrific. We've been running into this more and more. I do want to mention that, but there should have been a free kick for Fulham with a challenge on Willian right outside the box. I don't understand why that wasn't given. Now you have the situation for Raul. Now, I told you this to me was a dive. Okay. I'm going to call it the way I see it when it comes to our players or the other side. Okay. Raul, basically, is he touched? Yes. It would be like me putting my hand on your back and then you basically doing a Superman. That's what it looked like. I don't think that's a penalty. I actually think they got it right, but I've also seen that given too. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, he has been pushed, but I mean, honestly, I thought he'd gone into epileptic shock. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about.
It was embarrassing, Russ, to be honest with you. And,
okay.
You know, I mean,
that's where I'm going
on a penalty from that.
Okay. Just want to be fair. I call both ways when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I know it's a Fulham player.
I was thinking, I hope Silver's got his EpiPen ready for him.
Oh my Lord. Okay. All right. Now it's time to go back to the good stuff before we end the show talking about man of the match. Let's go talk one more time about Ryan Sessegnon. And what's so great about this moment, he comes on, what was it, 30, 45 seconds from coming on. Willian gets a nice clap off, right? The fans gave him a nice round there. That was really good to see. And then comes on Ryan Sessegnon. I think in the 87th, 88th minute? Late in the yeah. So he comes on, and there's a long kick out from Bernd Leno.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit as well for that, Russ.
Yes. And I've seen a lot of criticism of Spence, and he deserves it because Ryan Sessegnon runs right by him, and he's one-on-one with Ben Davies, and he bullies him. He wanted it more, and then he does it with his other foot. He does it with his weaker foot, which is incredible. What a great goal. The whole thing is just amazing. It's a moment in Fulham history that you'll always remember, that the fans will always remember. That's what was so special about that goal, Tony. Talk us through it.
That goal that Sessegnon scored is normally a goal that Fulham give up. Right? That's normally how we defend, Russ. Seriously, that would be a typical. You'd be looking at Diop, Anderson giving away a goal like that. But look, ultimately, horrendous defending from Ben Davies, horrendous defending from Spence. He's got no awareness. Why is the fullback not covering around his centre half there and reading the danger? Completely ball watching. I think Leno deserves a lot of credit because actually Leno could have played that ball short, right? And we could have gone how he always does, play it into the centre half, then go out to the left back, then play it into mid, all that. But he actually went bang. There you go. Deal with that. Ryan Sessegnon, as you said, absolutely bullied Ben Davies like a ragdoll.
Yep.
Bullied him. Won the physical battle, turned, and then you know what? It's one of those, he didn't even think about it. He just wrapped his right foot round it. He probably couldn't do that again if you paid him, is the honest truth. And he's wrapped his right foot around it. And my word, what a finish. And I was right behind it. And I was out of my seat before it hit the back of the net because it was just it was just a great finish. And like I said, you couldn't have written it. You absolutely could not have written it.
And what's great about it, again, you've talked a good amount about the goal, but let's also talk about what happened afterwards. Because I think it was a situation where you got a player that used to play for Tottenham Hotspur and was trying to balance being excited that he scored this great goal, to give respect, but also show respect for the Fulham supporters, which he absolutely did in a wonderful way, Tony. Wonderful way. Tom Kearney pushes him out, and I thought that was a moment I'll never forget. Let's talk about how that all played out.
Yeah, look, I think he was maybe in a little bit of shock, Russ, to be honest, as well, because but the hammy end just exploded, and ultimately, you're right. He handled himself very maturely,
Very much so.
and because that's a moment. Because boy, if I had scored that, I would have been in the hammy end, and the fans would have been all over me, and I would have been going mental. But look, he handled it very well, very respectful for Tottenham, and trust me, he didn't have to be, really, given the stick that he took at that football club for 4.5 years, 5 years. But look, that says everything you need to know about Ryan Sessegnon. He's a classy, mature young man who, got his moment, enjoyed it, loved it. And yeah, look, he loves the club. We love him. And I was just, as I say, delighted for him to have that moment. Really, it was very special. Very, very special.
And I'm going to say this, Tony, as that moment was special, my thought was the best is yet to come, because I'm thinking we're going to have more moments like this. We saw it against Wolves. I'm telling you, he is ready to explode. He's ready to be Ryan Sessegnon again that we remember from 2018. I know I am jumping way ahead, but the ability is still there. It never left, Tony. That ability was always there.
We know his qualities, Russ. We know what he can do. The thing is that, and this is a lot to be said, actually, about young players at Fulham. He left Fulham too early. In my opinion, he should have had the season with us in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Right? He should have had a season with us in the Premier League and then maybe explored his options thereafter. But as we know, and we've seen it many, many times, look at Fabio Carvalho, look at, Patrick Roberts, look at Harvey Elliott, they all go, for whatever reasons. And it is what it is. But he's, young players coming through now, Josh King especially needs to be very wary of this. Just look at, Ryan, and look at his journey. It's not always greener on the other side. It doesn't always work out. And 19 is very young to be leaving a club that you've been at, had an unbelievable season, and then not been able to go on and express yourself at that time in the Premier League with the club you're at. So there's something to be said about that.
I totally agree. And let's just say I'm very happy for him. And I'm going to say it once again, 24 years old, Tony. His prime is still ahead of him. That's what's great about what is to come from Ryan Sessegnon. I said it at the beginning of the season, whatever happens with Ryan Sessegnon is a bonus because we don't know what he has left because of the injuries. I think we're learning he's got a lot left in the tank. Now it's his chance to unload whatever is in that tank, and it's going to be in a Fulham shirt. That's what's exciting. And that's why I wanted to talk about that. All right. Tony, let's end with man of the match. I've already told you that my man of the match is Willian because of the overall package of everything that he offered in this match. I almost scored a fantastic goal. You want to talk about the Sessegnon goal? He was inches away from doing a similar thing. So
he was.
Willian, 36 years old, turning back time, my friend. He can still do it. He doesn't have the wheels anymore, but it's everything else that he offers Fulham that I think they actually need right now, Tony. So for me, my man of the match is Willian.
Great choice, Russ, and a lot of Fulham fans' main choice. I think special mention to Andreas Pereira as well.
Yes.
I haven't been his biggest fan and whatever, but he deserves credit when credit's due. But my man of the match is Rodrigo Muniz.
Okay, that's a good one.
Simply because of the impact that he had when he came on the pitch. He absolutely changed Fulham's dynamic. Was a constant threat. Was a beast up front. Got us on the front foot with the goal and was just a constant menace on that Tottenham back line. And for me, he's won us the game.
Okay. And I just shared a comment from Vic here. Man of the match, Andres Pereira, no doubt to me. And I understand why you went there. There are many places where we can go. And I also mentioned, I know I talked about that wonderful moment from Calvin Bassey, but beyond that, Tony, he is just coming into shape as just a quality center back, Tony. He needs mention as well. Honestly,
absolutely.
You can count on him each and every match. Do defenders have like a bad moment every once in a while? Yes, but come on. His bad moments are far and few between, and I think his future is extremely bright. That's what's great about all this. Let's see. Gary says, man of the match, Muniz, going right with you. I certainly understand that. And our friend Chris says he's with you. Man of the match, Muniz.
Good man, Chris. Good man. Good man.
Good man, of course, because he agrees with you. Good man. Good man. But honestly, Tony, and what's funny about this, what's just crazy about this is I don't know how often you and I have talked about Fulham need a striker, Fulham need a striker, Fulham need a striker. And I still think that they do, but I love the fact that we have these strikers that I wouldn't say prove us wrong, but are just doing their job and scoring goals and helping the team win matches. It's not always about the flashy player. Sometimes it's about the player that just does his job. And these two strikers are just doing their job, Tony. I'm talking about Raul too.
Look, you got to remember, Russ, right? Tottenham had a striker yesterday in Dominic Solanke. How much did they pay for him?
Oh,
right. And that's all I'm going to say. You're right. You know, Muniz and Raul are doing their jobs, Russ. Not every week, not every week, but most weeks when they've rotated or started or come on or done whatever, they have done their jobs. And I've always said it, and I'll continue to say it, they have got the hardest job in this team.
Yeah.
In this system, in this formation, the way that Silva sets up, they have the hardest job. And most often than not, they perform to the best levels that they possibly can. All right, it didn't happen for Raul yesterday for whatever reason, but he still put a shift in. He still worked hard. He still tried his best. And that's all you can ask for. I agree with you. I think we do need another centre forward. We definitely need another centre forward. And especially if we get into Europe next season, we are going to need another centre forward. No question about it. But at the moment, they are doing their jobs, and long may it continue.
Absolutely. Okay. Tony, my friend, great show as always.
Great
I
show.
hope you enjoyed it.
Loved it. Great. And loved it. Brilliant.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to wrap up this show. Before we go, I also want to mention I am shortly going to be doing another episode of View from the Hammy End with the guys from the Hammy End, and that should be fun as well. So I've got a lot more content coming your way on this massive Fulham victory against Tottenham. And I know Fulham are going to be on break, but we're still going to be talking about Fulham. We're still going to do shows. So I got a lot still coming to you. And I want to thank everyone that watches and listens to the show. Anyways, so let's finish up. For Tony Gold, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the TalkSport Fan Network.